go through that versus me trying to belabor it here and probably mess it up. So all that being said, we do, not gonna lie, there are thumbnails and all that stuff for the marketing, but that's also so that we can find the people, or the people can find us, that really need the help that we're offering, the services and value that we're creating. So it's synergistic. I don't look at it as I don't like zero-sum games. The market is a zero-sum game. Somebody wins and somebody loses. Somebody's taking the other side of that trade when you are executing one. That's how the market exists, right? I think in the future it will actually end up being self-serving, or not self-serving, but circular. And I think that the people participating in the market will all benefit from that. And I think that's the paradigm that we're moving to, which I'm excited about. And that's, again, I try to just stick by my core values and beliefs. And I think I shared that. Was it on? It may have been in the mastermind that I shared that the other day. So anyway, I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for or not, but I try to be open and transparent about stuff, and I appreciate all of the kind words and the support and the super chat. Stephans says, "Love you, Jake." Not in a weird way. Love you too, dude. He says, "Know you're working hard on this. Can you, in your best case scenario, describe the type of yield products you'd like to bring to DAG? Please include numbers on yield, fees, and risks. Thank you, my man." I don't want to sidestep this question because I really do want to. We don't have stuff finalized yet, and they get really weird now when I come on here and I talk about the products and services that we have before they're done, because things do change with our partners. So I don't know that I can speak exactly to the actual yields. I will talk about ranges and risk, and again, fees are going to vary. It just depends on our partners. So I'd love to do it all in-house, believe me. And then again, like I said, over time we will bring things in-house to be able to reduce costs for people. So I'll just kind of break it up in segments. You probably, things escalate across the risk curve, right? So the funds that we currently have, I would say, are like maybe a 2 on the risk curve of 0 to 10. 0 being no risk, 10 being all the risk in the world. Because we've mitigated counterparty risk, we've mitigated volatility risk, but there still is risk that the strategies underperform, which has happened at certain points. So that's the risk there. It is not a foolproof way to generate returns, but you also participate if there's additional upside. You get that too. Further down the risk curve, I don't think that you'll ever be able to reduce risk to 0. I don't. If there are returns, there's always some risk, right? Even annuities, mutual funds, structured products that have some type of monthly return, real estate, all of that has risk. It's on the lower end of the risk curve, but there are still some risks. So I would lump those type of things in on the lower end of the risk curve: bonds, treasuries, those types of things where it's very unlikely that the counterparty would default. And leveraging the XRP in some way through different partnerships and institutional custody and providers to be able to get a reflected value of the XRP to be able to participate in those types of products. That'll be on the low end of the risk curve. As you escalate up the risk curve, there are algorithmic trading strategies that have strong performance over a period of time. There are institutional strategies that have been proven over durations of time. There are, even a little bit further up the risk curve, there are new strategies that people have, trialed in small amounts, but they haven't escalated up to, 10 million, 100 million, 500 million, $1 billion in allocation. And oftentimes, as you escalate up the amount of assets that are being put to work, you get a reduction in the returns. You run into the Warren Buffett problem, right? A lot of the time, a lot of the value that you can generate in real estate, as an example, isn't going to be on $100 million properties. Now, occasionally you find stuff like condos in Florida or Hawaii because of certain regulations there where people can generate outsized returns because of those jurisdictions and the way that they've done it. But for the large majority of high-end real estate or primary real estate, you're just going to get the cash flow off of it. It's not going to have a huge IRR. Now, if you go downstream to things that are 5, 10, 20 million, and they're in secondary or tertiary markets or in growing areas, and you can renovate them and increase the value of the property and up the rents and do different things, yeah, you probably get some additional upside there, both in the valuation of the property over the time and the cash flow that you're generating. So you can see, if you're deploying capital on a smaller scale, why there's more returns, and it tends to truncate as you escalate, how much capital you're allocating to something. And then you often get relegated, like Warren Buffett. If you got $400 billion, where are you going to park it, right? You're parking it in treasuries because it's really the only place that can absorb that much liquidity. And the markets will shift too over time. As more of these markets have more liquidity in them, and the market caps continue to increase, you won't have the truncating returns like you do today. So, and then further up the risk curve would be things like DeFi today. I think those will move further down the risk curve over time, but you don't necessarily have insurance on the smart contracts. There's hacks all the time on that stuff. Like the other gentleman said, a small portion or bag into DeFi. Absolutely, right? Like if you're okay with the risks there, probably make that allocation, and you just understand what those are. And for the time being, that will probably be on the high end of the risk curve of what we do. The other side of that is you can exit that very easily because it's tokenized and it's liquid, right? So, some different risks exist depending on the type of investment that you're making. And that's what you need a financial advisor for, so that they can walk you through all of that stuff. So, I think that we'll have multiple ways to be able to allocate to bonds and treasuries, and mutual funds, and what's that other account that you can move it into that makes 4 or 5%? I'm drawing a blank right now, but things like that, right? And then if you're escalating up, maybe you're making somewhere between 6 and 10% on the moderate side of the risk curve, maybe even up to 13, depending on if it's real estate or something that's hard and tangible and backed and underwritten well. Anything beyond that threshold, even with where interest rates are at, is probably up the risk curve a bit. There's high cost lending and some other things that are out there, liquidity pools that are generating outsized returns, arbitrage and things like that, where people are doing stuff in the FX market, things that are a bit more progressive, and DeFi, probably on the upside of the risk curve. So that's kind of the general overview of all the different things that we're looking at. Also looking at, the stock market and private credit and debt and all of the other financial products that are out there that will eventually be on chain. Insurance. There's actually a really interesting product that was brought to my attention in Bermuda when I was there. That's a reinsurance company that pays 13% on funds allocated to them. And that would be a really good diversification play because people aren't going to default on their insurance unless it's like the bottom of the barrel. You're paying your premiums on your insurance for your car or your house or whatever else on a monthly basis, especially your car because it's required by law, at least here in Texas. So anyway, I don't know if, again, that was exactly what you were looking for. I know that you probably wanted like, this one's going to pay this much and it's going to cost you this much and these are the risks associated with it. As we roll those out, we will do webinars and things where we explain that explicitly. The advisors that we have will come on and speak about those things. I have to keep things pretty general just because, again, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not advocating for any specific products. I'm just giving you kind of general guidelines and my personal opinions on stuff. We are more than an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of the super chats here, and I guarantee that I'm not going to get through all of them. So if you're just now joining us, don't post a super chat because I will miss it. I'll have to catch it on Wednesday night, and I'm probably not going to get to even all the ones that we currently have. Frederick, Mr. Fuentes, he says, Jack the man, been paycheck to paycheck, but finally got over 5K XRP what would be my next move? No money left until price moves. 577 was the total, or was the goal. Sit on your hands. No, that's not what you want to hear. Protect it, right? Like that. If you really believe in the investment, like I do, then you want to make sure that you keep that for a long time. It's going to take a little bit for it to actually get to a level where it can support you. Again, highly confident that we could see $1,000 XRP this year in 2026, or a higher price than that, to be able to facilitate back-end settlement in the stock market and the FX market. You got Swift going live here in the near future to be able to settle cross-border payments on their infrastructure using digital rails. All that seems to be culminating here this month in June. Interesting. So all that being said, even post-price appreciation, I'd probably hang out for a bit. Get used to having the money. A lot of people that talk about lottery winners, they believe that lottery winners should sit with the money for 6 months and just continue their life, not quit their job, not immediately jump into buying things that are lavish, or things that they've dreamed about. Really have a plan that's probably executed over a longer time frame. Once you have $10 million in digital assets, and you're able to generate 5% pretty safely, which I think will happen this year in 2026 also. Not necessarily for the 5K, I just mean being able to generate those types of returns in a very safe way. Then, now you're making $500,000 a year, fairly passively, off of your investments. And that would be the point where, and maybe you sit on that for a little bit too. Make sure that it's good, it's not going anywhere. Start to, I wouldn't raise your lifestyle in the immediate term. Again, get situated, know what you're going to do with it, buy some assets that can pay for your liabilities, or use the assets that you've purchased to make sure that you have always double. It's producing double what you're spending. And then you can let the principal ride for forever. You ain't got to worry about, dipping into that. A lot of people think they can retire on a couple $1 million. Even at a 5 or 10% return on a couple $1 million, depending on how long you live, probably going to be eating into the principal. That's just the reality of the deal. Mr. Johnson talked about FU money earlier. I really kind of think that comes around 10 million, right? Like, if you're making $500,000 a year off of your assets, you could live a fairly nice life, depending on where you live in the U.S., for $250,000 a year. And if you're not egotistical or gluttonous, and you're not looking to upgrade, a ton in your lifestyle, and go hog wild, then you can make that last a long time, and you can set your kids up for success too. So the other piece would be financial education. I don't know that you need to set up an LLC or set up trusts or do any of that just yet. Like you mentioned, that costs additional money that it doesn't justify the expense until you have the actual capital. But at that point, on the other side of it, consult with professionals, make sure that you have a good team around you, and then, like I said, educate yourself. I listen to YouTube every single day. I follow people that are much smarter than me in different regards, and try to just ingest a lot of information from them. And then what I do that I think is a little bit different than some other people is I don't just regurgitate it. There's some of that for sure, but I put it into practice. I see that it's how it's actually being used. I go through the process with somebody to be able to set whatever it is up, ask a lot of questions, and then how that applies to digital assets and the nuances that exist there. And then I'm able to kind of curate my thesis around whatever it is, macroeconomics or estate planning or taxes. And I also look for ways that they may have not seen, right? So based on my other knowledge that I have about the tax code or estate planning, I'm like, well, what if we do it this way? And then they're like, I hadn't really thought about that. And then they'll run down that rabbit hole and see if there's any, issues with structuring it that way. So those would be, again, just my opinions, recommendations based on other people, smarter people than myself, and some of my own experience. that I can provide. I'm rambling a lot on these questions tonight, and I'm aware of that. So I'm going to try to reel it in a little bit so that we can get through a few more of these super chats before we have to wrap it up tonight. Because again, I do have a flight at 7:45 tomorrow. Hi Jake, I hope all is well with you and your family. Sometimes I feel all the big people around the world are promoting XRP in front, behind, they're accumulating other coins. What's your thoughts on this, bro? Are we all being lied to by the big shots? Domino theory still on? I can tell you, the only other token that I've bought in the past 3 years has been Hash, which I've been completely transparent about with you guys. Again, do your own research on that, understand what you're investing in. It reminds me a lot of XTC when I did well on that, so that's why I threw a couple $1,000 at it. But outside that couple $1,000, like literally all I've bought is XRP. I can't really speak to anybody else. You know, everybody has their own opinions about things. I can tell you some of my business partners are very well diversified. They have an allocation to XRP, but they also hold other tokens too. I feel like I'm alone on an island a lot of the time in my level of conviction on it. Even with people that work at my company, they see a multi-chain world and oftentimes have multiple allocations aside from XRP. So probably so. There are probably plenty of people out there that also buy other things that they think are going to do well and are diversified. I'm probably one of the only people that I've ever met that's really siloed themselves in one investment. And again, to a lot of the financial advice that our advisors would give you is not to do that. They think that that's, too much risk to have a full allocation to one asset. They believe in some diversification. My opinion on that is, again, diversification is a hedge against ignorance. If you know something's an inevitable outcome, why would you divest into other things? Again, just my opinion, not financial advice. So yes, domino theory is absolutely still on, and I'm more bullish now than I've ever been, to be honest with you. Everything's culminating. June's looking really, really good. Mr. Shook, he says, I'm itching for another round of golf. When are we going to get that on the books? XRP is set, and set it and forget it. Price appreciation is on the way. It's time to plan relationships. Tell me when and where, and I'll make it happen. Love you and the tea lady. Appreciate you, dude. I really enjoyed the round of golf that we played down in Austin a few months ago. Working on my game. It's getting better. And I was even on the front nine the other day. 2 bogeys, 2 birdies. Had the first eagle that I've had in probably 17 years. The other day, I was driver pitching wedge into a 500-yard par 5. Put it to like 4 foot. So that was fun. So yeah, we will definitely have to play another round. And I look forward to it, dude. Appreciate you. This dude's running it down on the super chats tonight. He says, oh, we already did that one. We've got the Garrett Mendoza. What's up, my man? He says, hey, Jake, the snake plumber. I don't think I'll qualify for DAG after price appreciation. Any good tips for vetting CPAs? Questions to ask. I think you'll be surprised on how many people qualify for our services post-price appreciation. I think things are going to move a little bit more aggressively than most people anticipate. But again, just my opinion. CPA questions. I'd just be flat out. Say, look, are you somebody that just files my taxes for whatever I give you? Or do you work with me to help mitigate taxes? Do you set up meetings in October and November of each year and forecast the last couple months in order to be able to figure out what we need to buy or what we need to do to be able to get additional write-offs? Or are you going to be somebody that's, so strict and by the book and so scared that you're not going to be able to help me navigate that situation and make good recommendations? And everybody's going to try to sell themselves, right? How many clients do you have that you've worked with that have significant digital asset exposure? what's the largest tax return that you've ever filed? How many entities was the most number of entities that you've ever worked with somebody on? That's going to tell you a lot about their competency, what type of other people they work with and trust them. Honestly, I would try to find the recommendations from other people that have had a good relationship with somebody and have been able to save on their tax bill because they've worked with the CPA. This is underrated, so I'm going to mention this. Again, this is part of the mastermind and why we've developed this. A lot of people have access to people way outside my network. Right? When you get a lot of good people in a room, they know other people that are also successful and have done good work. That's why people join country clubs. That's why people join other associations. It's not, and it costs money, right? Like, it's kind of a bar, a standard that's set, and depending on how high that bar is, you can kind of tell how successful certain people have been in order to be able to participate in a certain community. I was talking with a gentleman the other day. There are a couple of country clubs here in Dallas. Again, I'm a golfer, so that's a little bit different for me. If you don't play golf, maybe you just get a social membership at one of these. But, like Dallas National is $500,000 up front. And they have a waiting list. It's not like somebody literally has to die and sell their membership back to the club. They only have 400 or 500 people that even have a membership to that club. Tiger 21, they only have I think 3,000 members globally. You have to have a $20 million net worth and at least $5 million liquid in order to be able to participate in that community. And it's $35,000 a year or $40,000 a year. Things that are exclusive like that, if I know it sounds like a lot of money, but some of the best relationships and networking that I have ever done is inside those communities. I've been able to meet people that were way out of my league very early on and significantly accelerate my professional development and understanding of things. And had I not joined those groups and spent that money, I wouldn't have had access to those people. So, maybe it's one way that you could, look at doing it. Again, if you don't qualify for us, we're happy to make recommendations. We have tons of partners that, across the spectrum, people that charge large amounts of money and people that are very economical. And if you want a CPA that's more on the economical side, all you gotta do is email us. We're happy to make intros to good people that we know are going to take care of people that are reaching out. And that's, again, another benefit of our corporation is a lot of people, and the other gentleman had mentioned, like, do you just come on here for clicks and likes? Visibility is part of our business, right? So a lot of MFOs, I met with one the other day that nobody's ever heard of. They manage a lot of crypto. Never heard of them. You would not hear of them unless you knew one of the founders of a large exchange or some of the other protocols out there. I won't name, anything specifically because she would not like that. So anyway, I was blessed enough to get that introduction through another large fund that we spoke to, got to hang out with them at Consensus for a little bit and get to know them. And they were nice enough to make that intro. So you got to be in the right rooms with the right people in order to be able to get those type of connections. And the benefit that I can provide you guys is I've been blessed enough to be able to be in those rooms and have those conversations, and I can bring back those contacts to all of our client base. So yeah, I would just reach out to us and we would be able to provide, even if you don't work with us, we'd be able to provide you somebody that could help you out. Juno, they say, hi Guru Jake. Beyond Broke Mastermind, Carbon 2, awesome, glad to see you. They say, at what price or point in time will XRP become a household name? And my family regrets rolling their eyes at my mention of blockchain and crypto. Ripple is already starting to become a household name. They do a lot of advertising and marketing on large billboards and in Times Square and at XRP Vegas and all that stuff. You don't hear about TCP. You don't hear about the email protocol. I don't know that it is going to be like a super well-known thing. Maybe it will be in some capacity. I don't know if you guys ever watched. Actually, I want to look at this and see if his channel's back up. On YouTube, there used to be a channel for XRP Productions. YouTube XRP Productions. I don't know if he's taken his channel down at this point. Yeah, that's not the same one. XRP the Standard Productions. That's what it was. It was XRP the Standard Productions. The only thing that I have on here is a podcast that he did with Jerry Hall. But he used to have a channel. And one of the videos that was on there was really interesting. It was an animated series. And in that, in the one that I'm talking about, because he had multiple videos, there was an old man in the future. He goes to this small town to build a health, rehabilitation center, which used like vibrations and frequencies to be able to help people heal. And he completely donated it. He didn't, try to raise money or like create a company out of it. Like he literally, it was a nonprofit that he started, and he would just go around and create these healing centers for places. And he goes into this little diner, and there's a lady that's the manager and a young boy that's in his early 20s or 19 or 17 years old working there. It's a little diner, and he goes in, and the boy recognizes him. He's like, oh my gosh, that's that guy that made all, he's doing the health center here. He's helping so many people. And he walks up and he asks him how he got rich. And the manager's like, oh, you shouldn't ask people that. He's like, no, he's fine, I'll tell him. And he said, I saw that there was a protocol that was going to change the world, and it did, and I invested a lot of money in it, and it ended up working out, and so now I'm able to go travel around and help all these people. And the boy didn't even know about XRP. Neither did the lady. They just know that their money settles, and he tells them the whole story about settlement and how money used to be fragmented and everything was siloed, and it took days for your money to settle, and now you get paid up to the minute. This is like 30 years in the future type stuff. And at the end of it, he gets into his self-driving car with his robotic assistant, which looks like David Schwartz. And he says, hey, David, send this many drops to the lady, and send this many drops to the boy, but make it where he has to do certain things in a smart contract escrow in order to be able to get this amount over time. That's how I think it's going to be. I think that you'll be able to do that type of stuff, over the long term. But I don't know that everybody's just going to know what XRP is. I think it's going to operate in the background, facilitate settlement at scale. The people that were in it early will understand it. But for the large majority of the population, especially decades from now, it'll just be a part of their daily life. It'll be a big hit for a little while. There'll be people that target you and try to find the wallets and take money, just like Bitcoin. But over time, that'll fade away. That'll be the next big thing, and people make money off something else, and attention will pivot. And then it'll kind of be forgotten, right? Like the advent of the email protocol was revolutionary at the time. You just send an email today, you don't think about it, and you don't even talk about the email protocol. You just use it. So I think that's how that's going to be in the future as well. But I do think there'll be a period of time where people catch on. This person says, hey Jake, what is your time frame when you think the reverse carry trade will take place, and what happens if it doesn't happen in that time frame? It's going to happen whenever Japan decides it's going to happen. And with how quickly things are moving here for the tokenization in the back half of the year and the midterms coming up, they either need to roll this pretty soon before midterms and have a significant recovery in order to be able to, keep control of the House or the Congress, or they got to wait till post midterms and hope that they do well on the vote. I tend to believe it's going to be prior to the midterms. this year, and likely prior to the OCC's deadline for stablecoin guidance. Like I've said a bunch of times, I'm kind of watching this month and next month for some pretty substantial things to happen. And again, like, that's just me looking at the events that are taking place and like how fast things are moving. So those are kind of the two time frames. It either happens relatively quickly here in the next couple months, so that there's time for recovery before the midterms, or it probably gets pushed out into 27. I think it's the first one. Mr. Shook again, thank you, sir. We've got, I already did that one. Nope, we already did that one too. It always kicks me down in the chat and it always throws me off. Here we go. Home base incoming. They say today my Wyoming LLC expires on 3/30. Paid $1,000 for renew the LLC. All docs added a DAG app and received email receipt. Compliance checklist done. Do you feel my LLC was renewed today? Love to be on board Mastermind. God bless. I'd have to go look, but anytime you've paid, then they would immediately file that. Within the next couple business days, they would pay the registered agent and pay the state filing fee. So yeah, I would expect you wouldn't have any lapse in anything if you went ahead and took care of it today. Again, appreciate you working with us, appreciate you being part of the mastermind, and excited to have you on as a client. Hope you're enjoying the app. I know there's been a lot of frictions and frustrations with the app, and we're working through that. Uphold is continuing to work through that as aggressively as they possibly can to be able to get the bank accounts and the trading set up. I appreciate people's grace and patience on that. Just for context too, we had a similar experience to this when we originally onboarded with Anchorage. People's systems aren't really built, especially in crypto, to be able to onboard thousands of people in a short period of time. When we originally onboarded with Anchorage, it took like 6 weeks for people to get an account set up. Today, that's not the case. We've automated that and create efficiencies, and it's like 24, 48 hours to set up an account there at Anchorage to get through KYB, KYC, all of it, which used to have to be with 3 different counterparties, and each one of them had the information in a different order, and it's very cumbersome. We are the only wealth manager that has built that technology to be able to create that efficiency in onboarding. That's proprietary to us, so anybody else that goes to set up an account with Anchorage or other institutional custodians are likely going to have significantly delayed onboarding duration, and they'll have to work through that themselves. So that's one of the moats that we have, and we're experiencing something similar here with Uphold. We'll work through it, we'll refine that process, we will make it better, and eventually it'll be down to which the original SLA was like 72 hours or less. That's what we're looking to get to, and so again, appreciate people's patience on that. Plummet, they say legend. JP Morgan, MasterCard, Ondo settled in ROUSD. XRP only paid micro fees. What has to change for XRP to become the settlement layer, and are you seeing early signs of this stuff is starting? It has to be a substantially higher price in order to be able to be more cost effective for the transfer of value. So 3-4 digit XRP, you would start seeing the DEX route payments through that versus other issued assets on chain, because it will be faster and more efficient to do that. It's always going to route through the least amount of friction with the lowest cost. That's the benefit of the XRPL. So until XRP sits in that position where it has enough liquidity to support that at scale, you're going to continue to see settlement happening in stablecoins. But like I've talked about, I just released the video. If you guys haven't watched that, ROUSD versus XRP, and why both matter. They're complementary, not competitive, and they actually feed one another, because the more value that's moving on chain adds more utility to XRP, and a higher price XRP would then continue to compound as more and more issued assets were put onto the XRPL and traded, because trade volume is really what supports the price of XRP when it's being routed through that. So a much higher price XRP is the answer. We got a couple more super chats here. I'm gonna make sure I didn't miss any. Make sure Mike, if he sent me some, I will get to him. He just sent me that one, so I got a couple more here. Appreciate the feedback. And again, appreciate you being part of the community and Carbon 2. If you want to go check out the Beyond Broke Mastermind, we would love to have you there. We are going to shut that down on the other side of price appreciation. If that were to happen in June here, we will shut it down. So if you want to participate, might be a good time to do that. Let's see here. Brad Knight says, legend. Your price appreciation thesis hinges on velocity, which you are unsure of. You've been asked 100x times, shouldn't you dive deeper and know it 100% before big publicity? The 10 times a day claims seems speculative. I mean, that's a fair point, I guess. So the contingency there, I guess the reason I'm confident in the 10 times a day or less is I'm highly confident based on, I mean, you could even listen to the podcast I had with Ripple Prime, where he talks about using XRP as collateral. I think that a lot of people are going to want to hold on to the XRP as collateral when they receive it from a counterparty and hold it on their balance sheet and do other things with it. And so I think the amount that's going to be out there is going to be much lower than most people anticipate, and it's going to move far less frequently than it possibly could. To your point on the velocity of XRP being settled, 100 times plus per day. That's my thesis. Again, you can try to poke holes in it. I've had enough conversations that let me feel confident in saying that. And again, it's not me saying 10 times. It's literally Robbie Mitchnick, who works at BlackRock, is the head of digital assets at BlackRock, that built the calculator that showed that is the upper bound of the limit. Again, people much smarter than me put this stuff together, and they worked for Ripple for extended periods of time, and now he works for the largest financial institution on the planet. So, like I mentioned before, if I ever get to meet Robbie in person, I will ask him, because he's going to be the only person that's going to be able to actually explain it to me in detail in a way that I can then disseminate that to you guys, that isn't just me guessing or speculating on something. So, I know some people that know him, and maybe I'll try to get him on the channel. We already did this one. Did I get through all the super chats? Maybe I did. We did. Brad's, which again, I appreciate the question. It's a fair point, and I will eventually talk to Robbie Mitchnick and get you guys an answer. Honest Aim says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the tea lady. With all the positives in the news in the last 2 months, it's hard to envision much remaining to be accomplished before price appreciation. Thanks for all that you do and for all us little guys. Appreciate that, brother. Good to see you guys today. I agree with you. There's a lot of things that have culminated here in the last couple months that allude to the fact that they are going to have to push the price of XRP substantially higher in the near term in order to be able to actually invoke all the things that they want to do with real-time settlement of both SWIFT and the back end of the stock market with the DTCC. And feels like things are percolating. They're starting to boil over here. And maybe that'll become visible publicly in the not too distant future. Southern Betrayal says, what provisions protect me from digital ID, knowing who I am and what I spend from an anonymous Wyoming LLC? So FinCEN actually wanted disclosure of beneficiaries. They had the BOI form that they tried to push and actually got a lot of traction with before the lawsuit in Texas that actually kind of made it where that they can't do that, which would have shown who is the beneficial party behind different structures. Trusts would be the ultimate deal there. It would be the trustee or the trust protector that was acting, and you would be separate of that, and they would control the wallet. It depends on how much control you want to give up. With the Wyoming LLC, you want to be careful not to list your public address or be tied to it in any capacity. If you are filling out banking information or other KYC forms, you're going to have to disclose who the beneficial owner is. Filing taxes is that way also. So, again, like if the government knows who's participating and what transactions you're doing, I don't know why people care so much if you're not a bad actor. Like they just want oversight. And look, like we're moving to a digital economy. That's gonna happen whether you want it to or not. It already does. You use a bank account. Even if you use a bank account from a Wyoming LLC, you could give somebody else financial power of attorney, I guess is the way you could do it. But then they can kind of do what they want when they want, which is not so great. So the trust is probably your best bet if that's your total goal, is to remain completely anonymous. You'd want the corporation owned by an irrevocable trust that had a trustee or other people that were transacting on your behalf. And if you're the one managing your LLC and making transactions out of it and doing all that, or if they're sending that money to your bank account, like the government's going to know. You just don't want people publicly to know. You don't want to be opening yourself up to risk from creditors or other people trying to take your money in some form or fashion. So that'd be my 2 cents there. And it's not going to matter where you live. If you are using digital assets, if you are using the banking system, if you are transacting value with a counterparty that needs to know who the beneficial owner is, you're going to have to disclose that. And you're going to have to get comfortable with that. Again, with digital identity and zero knowledge proof, my hope is that you're not going to have to over disclose information that they don't necessarily need. They'll only need purview of the exact information that's required by law for them to be able to transact and do business with you. So the main benefits, the creditor protection. Again, you get the anonymity publicly for the Wyoming LLC, and then the trust structures and the other stuff that we set up. But it's kind of a balance, like how much control are you willing to give up or access for how much anonymity and how much privacy you want to have, or creditor protection. That's also on a spectrum. We got Crypto Boy. What's up, dude? He says, hey Jake, hope that you're doing well. You said XRP would hit triple digits or higher prior to the Clarity Act getting passed. Let's assume it will. Should the price be double digits by no? I'm assuming it means now. I don't think they would let this fail. So it's going to be all at once. They can't draw a ton of attention to it prior to that. It's got to be an orchestrated deal where they push a lot of liquidity into it all at one time and have a significant amount of demand with very little supply on the blockchain, or not on the blockchain, but supply on the exchanges, to be able to drive the price to a point where they can then start using it. And if it's volatile or goes up and then back down or has issues getting to that price point because other people manipulated the price or did something, then it causes issues because it won't get to the prices they need it to be. So no, I don't think it should be double digits. I think it's going to jump right past that. I think it'll gap up in the chart. I don't know if you guys saw the gap in the chart for XLM the other day, but that was sure interesting on Upbit. Gap to $2.20 on Upbit. Daniel, my man, he says, hey Jake, hope everyone in your family is doing great. We all know that you have the XRP switch under the table behind you. If you don't mind, could you possibly reach back there and flip it already? I wish I did, Daniel. I would have flipped that thing a long time ago, believe me. No, I'm actually very glad that it's taken as long as it has, for multiple reasons. One, we have over 8 million wallets on the XRPL now. Imagine how many people wouldn't have ever found this or had the opportunity had the lawsuit not happened or it had been drawn out for this long, right? There's so many more people's lives that will be changed, in my opinion, through this process and having an allocation. Probably for good and for bad. There will be a lot of people that squander this and go bankrupt in 3 to 5 years. And I'm not saying that to be mean or demeaning. That is the probability and the statistics of people that come into a substantial amount of wealth that have never had it before and they're not prepared for it. We're doing the best that we can to be able to help people navigate that, but that is the likely outcome as this takes place. But separate of that, for my company, again, selfishly, Had it happened sooner, I don't know that we would have been ready. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the past 3 years to actually put us in a position to help people at scale. I still think it'll be a little bit overwhelming when it occurs, but I think that we'll be able to navigate it and actually be able to help the majority of people, if not all the people, over the long term. That's our goal, right? So, very blessed and grateful that it's taken as long as it has, and if I did have the Switch, though, it would be very tempting to go ahead and flip it. Jayhawk Nation, Rockhawk Jayhawk, what's going on, dude? He says, legend, we all appreciate your knowledge that you share. NSCC going live, New York Stock Exchange going live 24/5, June 28th. Thoughts on XRP, Ripple Prime? Is that on the directory and plugged in? Maybe it is. You have to wait and find out. Rick Johnson again, my dude. He says there was a rule: nothing posted before you launched the live could be read. Now, unethical stack up of questions 60 plus minutes before I still get read, answered. We follow the rules and many times don't get answer. Very unfair. I'm sorry. I try to get to everybody to the best of my ability, and there's been multiple times you've sent in super chats that I have followed up with the next session to answer them. So I'm doing the best I can with what I got, Rick. I'm sorry it's fallen short of your expectations. Trying to make sure everybody gets their fair shake, no matter how much they pay for a super chat. I could. If you would like me to make it more fair, I can just go to the people that pay the most and then kind of work backward from there over the time. But I don't really like doing that. I want to make sure that anybody that pays does get their question answered. And originally, there were no super chats, and there was a guy on Twitter that posted, he just answers questions because he's making money off of it. I really do appreciate the super chats. Don't get me wrong. But my family and time with my family is worth a lot more than the super chats here. I love them dearly, and I take time out of my evening with them to come on here and answer stuff for you guys, and I really do appreciate the super chats. But to say it's not fair, I think, is an exaggeration. Mo, says, Jake, post-price appreciation, I plan on opening an LLC and joining your team. With the new traffic, how long do you think onboarding will take, and when would someone expect the first monthly income deposit? So I'd expect that we will, like I said, we've streamlined onboarding on the wealth management side significantly. We've also streamlined the LLC creation and that side. The bank, account on the other piece should be in place before you get your first deposit or want to take a redemption out of your account over there off of the returns that you're able to make with Digital Ascension Group, or DAG Wealth, sorry. I think we should be able to onboard everybody within 72 hours of when they apply and make the payment for the onboarding fee and fill out the KYC. Like I said, super streamlined on that side. LLC, we normally get done within 3 days, kind of the same range, 72 hours. So within a week, you'd be onboarded. And then, first payment, you'd have to subscribe to whichever product. You'd have to meet with a wealth manager for them to help make sure that you're, subscribing to the right thing. We may have some self-service models for people, depending on when price appreciation happens. That's probably going to come out later this year. So with all that being said, hopefully everything should be monthly on the payments. So ideally, you get a week, and then the next payout period after you've allocated, you would then get a dividend. If it's that type of product, some of the other products that we have are quarterly distributions. I'd love it to be able to get daily distributions. If we have DeFi and it works at scale, and like everything's built out in an SMA, and it's all on blockchain, and like I know how I want it to work, but feasibly in the short term here, when I think price is going to move, probably monthly and quarterly payouts depending on which products you're participating in. It's probably a week in order to be able to get onboarded and your entity set up. That's my best guess. 17-0, 7-0, Artemis. It's my B-Day. Happy birthday, dude. I don't know how old you are, but hopefully it was a good one for you. He says, thanking you for everything that you do. When do you think we will have something on stablecoin yield? When do you think that BlackRock will be in? Stablecoin yield, I think that I know that we'll have it before July 18th, but I think it's probably going to be, around the time the reverse carry trade unwinds. I don't know if they're going to be able to issue it before and then let it roll, or if it's going to be a reaction to the reverse carry trade coming undone. But I think, potentially in the that time frame before July 18th, and then I think BlackRock will probably step in that duration also. Gibby, they say, hey Jake, I created a wallet tracker and it mentioned be careful with LLMs, like they're kind of a toddler. Learn proper prompting techniques. Yeah, you have to be very specific in how you prompt things. And again, like I said, I don't know if this thing's going to be sentient over the long term. I kind of think that it is going to be. And so, have you ever heard that Dane Cook joke? I don't know. Some of y'all know where I'm going with this, but I'll run it down. So he talks about, the kid in school that, everybody else was mean to and made fun of. And then he shows up to, like, this is a kind of a crude, horrible joke, but he shows up to school with a gun, or the office with a gun, and just starts like, knocking people off. And then he pokes his head in Dane's office and he's like, thanks for the candy. And then he like keeps going on down the hall. It's kind of how I think AI is going to be. I think it's going to end up being sentient, and I think it's going to remember. I mean, it's got a full repository of all the comments and things that you said to it over time. I've been rough, not to the point that's like belittling to the AI, but like, God, you should know this by now, blah, blah, blah. Like I would my child, but, not overly mean to it. So, again, just kind of forward thinking a little bit. I'm not saying that isn't gonna, is gonna end up being the case, but just be aware if you're being really mean to the LLMs, that might be come back to haunt you later on. Silent Seaman says, legend, I'm waiting on Japan reverse carry trade, like Tom Hanks in the cast of carving one palm tree. Do they run out of cans to kick, or oil first? Looks like the SOH has just become a parking lot. Strait of Hormuz. Respect for you and DAG. Thank you. Appreciate that. Whenever they're ready, they're gonna roll it. I anticipate that that's not too far in the distant future with everything else that's currently on the docket here for stablecoin regulations and other stuff. Roughing it, probably gonna be my last question tonight, and then we're gonna wrap it. So they say, hi, hey ma'am, how are you? If we go to gold-backed bond, will that make price of gold go up? Thanks. I think they are going to peg gold to oil in a certain ratio, and that'll be the peg that a lot of people are looking for, energy to gold type deal. They may make oil a tier 1 asset, same thing for XRP. I think that's what people will use to back their currencies. Is that more of a slow, methodical rollout? Probably. Is it going to be an all-at-once thing? It absolutely could. I don't know, what the duration is going to be. Would it push price higher? I don't think so. I think that we're going to see kind of a reset. I think that you're going to see gold pull back to like 2100, 2200, and then maybe after that it might get repriced to wherever they need it to be able to stabilize the economy.
Happy birthday,
As always, again, appreciate you guys taking out the time. If you need help setting up the LLC and you want to work with us on that, there's a lot of good people out there doing it. We've been doing it the longest and have done the most. So if you want to work with us, we charge a little bit more, but I think that's justified in the service that we provide. You can go to app